Everybody's got a story. You just have to listen. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this is Good Listen. And I've got Jim Murphy on the show today. If that name sounds familiar to you, yes, it is the same Jim Murphy, the author of the book Inner Excellence, that A.J. Brown, the receiver of the Philadelphia Eagles, was reading during a playoff game last January. But let me tell you, Jim's story is remarkable. Jim is a former professional athlete turned coach turned author who's made it his mission in life to help people live their best life possible. Jim Murphy, welcome to Good Listen. How are you?
Joe, thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And so I want to start with an odd fact. So my wife, I actually did a screenshot and I could show you, has 209,287 emails unread on her iPhone. Okay. The reason I bring this up is take me back to January when your book gets featured during an NFL playoff game because of A.J. Brown. What was your phone like? And I know you've recounted the story a million times, but in terms of like the immediate impact, what was your phone like? Did it almost explode when that moment happened?
Yeah, it was a very different, my life. I think of my life actually before January 12th, 2025, which just happened. I used to think of my life between before meeting Zoe, the homeless harpist in downtown Denver, when I almost had a mental breakdown, before and after, because that was two very different parts of my life, how my life really changed. And it happened again, January 12th, 2025. So just a few months ago. And I was in downtown Dallas in a hotel room. I was there to lead an Inner Excellence retreat. I'm watching actually Penn State play Notre Dame football game that had been a week or two over. And then I look at my phone, and my life was very slow at the time. Business was slow. It was kind of lonely. My mom was actually dying, and I look at my phone during the middle of the game and I see a whole bunch of text. And my first thought was, wow, mom must have died. And so I look at it and I'm like, oh, whoa. Okay, check out this football game. And then I was like, wow, this is going to change things. And it changed things a lot more than I ever knew. Yeah, it was crazy.
So cool. So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to talk about Zoe too, but I want to go way back to, for people who know your story now, that you were a former professional baseball player. Yeah. And just for fun, Jim, and I don't know if you're going to find this fun, I was like, let me look up Jim's old minor league stats. So I went to Baseball Reference, and in 1988, you played with the Geneva Cubs in the New York Penn League, which, for folks not familiar with minor league baseball, that league doesn't even exist anymore. They folded that league. In that year, you had 67 games, 242 at-bats. You batted .229 with an OPS of .597. What was Jim Murphy like at that moment? Because you're coming off, you were just drafted, so the sky's were the limit. Like your world was essentially beginning at the time. Then the harsh reality of how hard baseball is hits you. Take me back to Geneva. First of all, what the hell is Geneva? Where is that?
Yeah, it's upstate New York, Finger Lakes region, like between Syracuse and Rochester. Very small town, a couple thousand people. It was a culture shock. Everything was shocking. It was a really, really tough summer. One of the biggest challenges I've always had in my life is ego, and I think it's a very human challenge. So I haven't quite mastered it yet, because I want to tell you that the reason why my batting average was so low is I had a vision problem. And so I don't need to tell you that. I could just say, yeah, I just struggled. But my ego wants to say, look, Joe, I was actually a pretty good player, but I had a vision issue, and so you should think better about me, and so I can feel better about myself. And that's my ego coming in there. So yeah, the Geneva Cubs summer was really, really tough. I mean, I was making, I think $550 a month was my salary, and we don't get paid in the off season. So this tiny little town, we lost 18 games in a row. I couldn't see. I was struggling with my vision. It was just one of the toughest summers of my life for sure.
Wow. And fast forward, you become sort of like a career minor leaguer, and it all comes ahead in 96 with the independent Tri-City team. And I think this is a moment that happens to a lot of players that even like major leaguers where like they call them 4As, where essentially like you're really good at the minor leagues, but eventually you get to majors and they kind of find you out, you don't adapt, and you eventually retire. You never made the jump to the majors, but like tell me about that final decision to be like, I've had enough. Like this is it.
Yeah, so my story is kind of unique. Drafted by the Cubs, played 3 years in the minors, struggled with my vision every year. Although at spring training, I had a really good spring training 1 year, but it was really a long struggle. And then, in fact, one time I was in the middle of a game with the Cubs, and the pitcher was blurry. And I remember it was not just blurry, but it was kind of moving. And so, and he's going to throw this 90-mile-an-hour fastball, and it was so bad. I was like, I can't even, like, it's just too dangerous to even stand in the box. And I remember walking off the field. I didn't even say anything to my manager. I just said, I'm done. And then he was so mad. He's like, in all my years of baseball, no one has ever treated me like this, or something like that. He was so like, what did I care? I was like, my career is I can't see. And so, yeah, it was really tough. I left the Cubs, and I didn't touch a batter ball for 3 years. I went and played pro baseball again, or semi-pro. Had an amazing summer, and then played 2 more years of pro baseball. I was also a player coach, and that first year, '95, was with the team in Vancouver, BC, called the Surrey Glaciers, and it was amazing. Had so much, like, my vision was good again for half the summer, and so that was the first half was amazing. Made the All-Star team and had so much fun with my teammates. '96 with the Tri-City Posse, my last season. It was really tough. It wasn't a team that was I had friends on, and it was the opposite of '95. We had so much fun together. In '96, there was no fun. I didn't have any friends on the team. Um, yeah, it was a tough summer, and then leaving that was just the end of a dream. It was really hard.
Hmm. Well, and you're very humble, but you ripped it up pretty good in '95. Because I mentioned your tough stats. '95, 307 with an OPS of 872. That would pay you handsomely in the major leagues. So very nice. And then even in '96, you had a pretty solid year. All right, so you walk away from the game. And I think this is one of the things that most athletes struggle with. And it's usually, and when, talking to athletes, Jim, I'm sure, as your years as a coach and advisor, you notice that it's not the game they miss, it's that sort of camaraderie piece that you're referring to early in your career.
Yeah.
Was looking back at it now, is that the thing you miss the most? Just like the guys in the locker room, and as you know, baseball, a long grind. It's a long 6 months. It's like every day you're playing. What is that? What you miss most? I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but is there anything else you miss about the game?
So, yeah, that's. I think it's so important to know that we're created for a relationship. That's why we're created for a relationship. And then the greatest punishment in prison is to remove all relationships. So, get in isolation. And so, I remember, like, one of the so 95 with that team and Surrey Glaciers was such an incredible year. One of the highlights of my life. Had so much fun with those guys, and um, yeah, I mean, I had an amazing first half, like, baseball wise, but it was definitely the relationships and the fun that we had together. And that's kind of what happens to people, is that, and what's happened to me is that I've obsessed my whole life about the symbols of success, when what I've always really wanted was to feel fully alive. And if you want to feel fully alive and have an amazing life with amazing experiences and deep enriching relationships, learning and growing and making a difference, that's a very different life than making $1 million, or winning a gold medal, or becoming world number one. And so what's great is that if you pursue this life of fullness of life, it's going to give you the best chance of achieving anything great.
All right, so walk me down the path a little bit here, Jim. After you walk away from the game, it's obviously a tough part of your life. Tell me what led you to that moment that you referred to earlier with Zoe, and just kind of give us an overview of kind of how that went down. Because I'm sure I think we always remember our worst times more than our best times. It's
Yeah.
a funny thing about humans. So I'm sure you probably remember more in detail about that than hitting 300 in a season. So take us back to that time.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was really hard. I go back and then now I get a job downtown Seattle. I'm driving a truck for FedEx, and it was really hard to go from being a pro athlete to being a delivery driver for my ego. It was really hard. And then I get a call from Major League Baseball. And no, before that, a teammate says, "Hey Jim, would you take over coaching my high school team?" As a junior varsity coach at O'Day High School in downtown Seattle, all boys school. And I had no interest in coaching. Never occurred to me. Didn't think I could help anybody. And but it lined up with my schedule with FedEx, and so I did it. And we went undefeated, and I had the best time with those kids. And so that's when I decided, oh, I thought my destiny was to be a superstar Major League Baseball player or NFL player, and realized, oh, my destiny was to be a superstar Major League manager. But now, how do I go from coaching 15-year-olds to managing the Yankees and winning the World Series? And so I came up with this elaborate plan, get a master's in phys ed, so I can get a job teaching PE, coach the baseball team, win a state championship, get a job in college, do the same, get a job in the pros, work my way up, and then eventually win the World Series and do it again and happily ever after. That was my long-term plan. So I enroll in coaching science, human kinetics, University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC. And I started the baseball team there, get the master's. And then I was a personal trainer while I was there to pay for school. And one of my clients was this life coach. And he helped me go for a job. He said, let's go for a job, skip the high school college route. Let's go for a job in pro baseball right out of grad school by getting to know the people that can hire you. And so it was a brilliant idea. And so I did my master's paper on how to build a championship team. I sent a snail mail letter, for younger people, they may not know what that is, stamp and an envelope, and to 60 letters, all 30 teams, one to the GM and one to the field manager, and told them I'm studying how to build a championship team, do a master's degree on it, and can I interview you for 20 minutes? Did 39 interviews. I get a job with the Texas Rangers 2 weeks after graduation. Dream come true. Okay, I'm on my way to managing the big leagues. 6 months later, I quit in tears. It just wasn't a good fit. At the time, I thought I was a total failure. I've always had this obsessive personality, and I just thought, okay, this is the top. Pro baseball, that's the top, and I just totally failed at it. And looking back, I realized that it was a box that I wasn't meant to fit in. At the time, I thought, oh, you're just a failure. Like, you couldn't do it. But it just wasn't a good fit at the time. And they also didn't, they wanted me to put in my time and just kind of listen. And that also wasn't my personality. I wanted to get things done. And so I quit mid-season. And so that was really, really tough. I was crying. And then amazingly, what God did, I get a call from Major League Baseball a few months later and saying, hey, would you be interested in being the hitting coach for South Africa for the 2000 Olympic trials? And I was based in Johannesburg. And so I thought, oh, are they calling me because no one else will take the job? At the time, what was called the most dangerous city in the world. Our bat boy was living in the tool shed of our baseball field with his mother and little brother, Gift and Coupe. Amazing story. He got drafted by the Pirates, became a major league player. I'd never seen real poverty. It really changed my life, and made some lifelong relationships, friendships on that team. It was an extraordinary experience. We swept the Olympic trials. We go to the Sydney Olympics. Got to march in opening ceremonies, meet Nelson Mandela. Had one of the biggest upset victories in Olympic baseball history. It was an incredible experience. But after that, what am I going to do with my life now? Olympics are over. So I went back to being a personal trainer, and then did that for a few years. And then one day my girlfriend was like, Jim, what are you doing with your life? She knew I was getting restless. And so I got asked if I could come down for the weekend from my teammate in baseball, Ricky Scruggs. Would you come down to Tucson to launch the baseball academy? I decided to move to Tucson and live a life of solitude and help him out part-time and figure out what I can do with my life. And so that's what I did. I gave away over half my possessions. I moved to the desert to live this life of solitude. And I wanted to find something that I could devote my life to. And I did.
Wow, incredible! And tell me about this meeting with Zoe that you referred to earlier. Where did this happen along your journey? Because you mentioned like your life is marked with milestones. Tell me about
That's
that
right.
milestone.
Yeah. So this one was it was very significant. This was February 2010. And so the Olympics in Sydney were 2000 Olympics in Sydney, 2003 December. I leave for the desert to go live a life of solitude. I end up spending 5 years full-time writing and research the book Inner Excellence. That was not my plan. I didn't go there to write a book. I went there to go find my life. And when I was there, I decided to become a personal coach to pro baseball players, teach them how to have peace and confidence under pressure. My first two athletes do amazing. So then I decided to put together a little manual. And then that, after 5 years, that becomes the book Inner Excellence that AJ Brown has been reading on the sidelines. And so, but that process, that story, so through a series of miracles, I mean, a New York City literary agent, I get a major publisher, McGraw-Hill, it gets into bookstores around the world. This is now, it's 2009, but this is during this recession. And I had spent my life savings, and I went $90,000 in debt over the 5-year period. And so the book's in bookstores around the world, but I have no money to hire someone to market the book. I don't know how to do marketing, and I don't like promoting myself. So I'm in downtown Denver, February 2010, during the Vancouver Winter Olympics in my hometown, Vancouver, BC. Everyone's having a great time, and I'm falling apart. I'm in Denver to speak to some high schools, and I'm downtown, and this just all came to a head one day, and it was just, my mind started to spin out of control. So I was in relative isolation for 5 years. It's like I said earlier, we're created for relationship. I wasn't living in a teepee, but I just was like, no dinner parties, no barbecues, just obsessed about this goal for 5 years, 2.5 years in the desert and 2.5 years after. And so this is the end of the 5 years. So got my goal. It's in Barnes and Noble and bookstores around the world, but I was falling apart. And this is what can happen when you don't have someone there to tell you the truth about who you are and what's possible, which we all need in our lives, to remind you of that. And so I'm in downtown Denver, and I'm thinking, yeah, the book's in bookstores around the world, but you've got no money to hire someone to market the book. You don't like promoting yourself. If no one hears about the book, no one's going to buy the book. If no one buys the book, Barnes and Noble will pull it off their shelves. And this could happen in a matter of weeks. 5 years of all of this time, money, effort could all go down the drain if they pull it off the shelves. And I could see no way how that wasn't going to happen. Like, no one's going to hear about the book. So how are they going to buy it if they don't hear about it? That one little book on the shelf, they're going to go find. And so I was thinking, okay, so they're definitely going to pull it off the shelves in a matter of weeks. I'm going to be a total failure if that happens. Everyone knows I've obsessed about this for 5 years. And if they pull it off the shelves, I'll be a total failure. And if I'm a total failure, then no pro athlete would hire me, because that'd be stupid to hire a failure to coach you. So then I'll have to get a regular job. But in this recession, no one's going to hire a failure. You're not going to get a job at 7-Eleven, Starbucks, the local mini mart. You're going to die alone, homeless in the street. So that was my mind spinning out of control, so much so that, one negative thought led to another, that my knees started to shake, and like, I'm going to fall to the ground, like cut it off in a white jacket type of, I'd never experienced it before or after. It was scary. That's when I called my friend Ricky, and I said, tell me what to do. He said, find a homeless person and help him. I look around the corner, and there's this, what looked like a homeless guy, because he had a grocery cart full of stuff, and he's got this full-size harp and holy shoes. And I sit down next to him, and he's playing this beautiful music. And I look at my wallet. I must have taken a cash advance, because there was $100. And so there's no way I would have had that money without taking a cash advance. And most of my credit cards were maxed out. So I gave him all the money, and then I leave to go back to where I stand to run on the treadmill to try and breathe and get through the day. Come back to that same area a couple hours later, and I'm sitting in the Starbucks, just staring into the abyss. I've got too much anxiety to do anything, just waiting for the day to end. And the homeless guy walks past me, stops in his tracks, turns around and says, wait, are you the guy that gave me that money? And I said, yes. And he said, thank you so much for caring for me. No one's cared for me like that before. He leaves, and he comes back with a box of chocolates and a bracelet and a card. And he gives all three to me. And when I was writing the book, I asked this girl from my church, Jennifer, I said, hey, can you make sure this lines up with the Bible? I want to make sure that Inner Excellence is filled with wisdom and biblical truth, and nothing is contradictory. She said, Jim, I read Inner Excellence. have you ever heard of the word Zoe? And I said, no. She said, it's in the Bible a lot. It means fullness of life. I think that's what your book is about. And I said, yes, that's exactly what it is. My whole life, I'm obsessed about being a superstar, pursuing these superficial circumstances that I thought were going to be fulfilling, when what I've always really wanted was to feel fully alive. And so I started to revolve Inner Excellence, the book, around the pursuit of fullness of life, and let everything else be added to you. So I'm in the coffee shop, and the guy gives me the card, the bracelet that he made, and the chocolates. And then I open up the card, and it says, "Thank you so much for caring for me. Love, Zoe." I said, "Your name is Zoe?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you know what your name means?" He said, "No." I said, "It means fullness of life. I've studied that for the last 5 years. I just wrote a book about it." So I give him the book, and I never see him again. And so that was February 2010. And that's when things started to get a little crazy after that.
Wow. Wait, get crazy after that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's
what
when
happened
things
after
started to.
that?
Oh, well, so the next year and a half, I had multiple people, strangers, come up to me and tell me, God wanted me to tell you this. Um, do with it whatever you want. So one was a year later. The most memorable one was a year later. I'm in my friend's house in Vancouver, BC, about to leave, and his mother calls on Skype from India. And I said, "Oh, tell her I said hello." And she's like, "Jim's there? Oh, my friend wants to talk to Jim." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I sit in front of the laptop just like I am now. And here's a lady on the other side of the world, never seen her before. She said, "God wanted me to tell you a couple things." And I don't know if this happened to you before, Joe, but it's never happened to me before. A total stranger telling me about my life and what's going to happen to my life. It's never happened before or since. But this one time my life was pretty crazy. And this one was very unique. She said, "Jim, God wanted me to tell you a couple things. Everything that you've been going through has been training for you. God's going to bring people from all over the world to work with you. It's going to happen soon, and you're going to know it's from God. God's going to bless you." And so, very, very specific. And so, I was like, wow, okay. Um, and so, what happened also that I didn't tell you was I was, so April 1st, 2010, April 1st, 1990 is when I got released from the Cubs, or 91. And then April 1st, 2010, I, I walk into this. So this was right after the, February is when I had that near mental breakdown. April 1st, I have this, um, experience where I walk into this friend of a friend's house, and he starts to tell me about my life, another one of these strangers. But I'd never met him before. He said, "You're banging your head against the wall. You're not getting anywhere. And you're always obsessing about some project," which is true. And then this girl in the house says, she draws a picture of a kite and hands it to me and says, "What's wrong with this picture?" I said, "Well, your kite doesn't have a string." And she said, "Yeah, that kite is you. A slight breeze will blow you away," which is exactly how I felt. So they prayed for me, and they said, "You should come to our Bible study tonight." And I said, "Oh, sure." So I went to the Bible study, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, and like I had a million things to do. It all had to be done the day before, and I had no resources or understanding how to do it. Immense anxiety. And then I felt that night God saying, "There's nothing you've ever done or could ever do would change how much I love you." And I felt the weight of the world fall off my shoulders that night. But I was still emotionally weak and mentally weak. And then a year later was when I get I'm in this friend's house, and then there's like, that lady in India says, "Your good life's going to change. God's going to bless you." So then, and she said, "It's going to happen soon." A couple of weeks later, then I'm in my room, I'm sleeping, and it's early in the morning, and I hear a voice, and my eyes are closed because I'm still asleep. And the voice said, "Jimmy, you ready? Things are going to happen fast," just like she said. And I was like, I assumed it was God because I lived alone. So I was like, "Yes, God, I'm ready." And then immediately my alarm goes off, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe he's serious." And that's when everything started to happen. So a couple of weeks later, I get a call from a golf caddy in Dublin, Ireland. He read Inner Excellence somehow. Um, he said, "Jim, I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to my boss? He's a pro golfer in Sweden. He really needs your help." His name's Henrik Stenson. I fly out to Sweden. I start to work with Henrik. A few weeks later, I get a call from Tiger Woods' coach. And he said, "Jim, I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to my client?" So I fly out to California. I meet with him and his client called Hunter Mayhew. A few weeks later, I get a call from the CEO of Yum Brands, which is Taco Bell, Pizza, KFC, million something employees. "I read Inner Excellence. I'd like to work with you." He sends Inner Excellence to his executives in Europe. I start to work with some of them. One of them, I said, hey, you should come to Vancouver and do an inner excellence retreat. Flies to Vancouver, does an inner excellence retreat. He said, Jim, can you bring this exact retreat to my leadership team in Europe? I do. It's one of the best weeks of my life. They're clarifying their life purpose, learning inner excellence principles. It was extraordinary. I'm still friends with most everyone from that retreat in 2013 or 12. And so Henrik goes on to win the FedEx Cup a year and a half later. Hunter wins so when people call me, usually they're underperforming. Hunter wins a PGA Tour event within I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks. He wins the World Championship a month or two after that. And the majority of my clients since I've started this have the best year of their careers, our first year together, or the best year in the last 5 years. I've been traveling around the world doing inner excellence retreats, coaching pro athletes. And then January 12th happened, which is how I get to talk to you, Joe.
Wow. Remarkable. What a great story. Thank you for indulging me. I'm sure you've told this story 1,000 times, so I appreciate you walking me through it. It's great. So a couple things. First, your recollection of dates is really impressive. I don't even remember what yesterday's date was. So for you to remember these dates, and I know they're huge moments in your life, it's still pretty remarkable. And I'd be remiss without asking, because I forgot to mention earlier, your eyesight. How did you ever figure out what was going on there? Just briefly, if you don't mind, because I'm
Actually,
curious. You mentioned you went through all this shit, but you didn't mention about the eyesight thing.
yeah, so that's why I had to retire, because my vision was it's called dynamic visual acuity, is the ability for your muscles of your eye to track a moving object. So to see an eye chart, they don't have to do much together. But if it starts to move, the both eyes have to work very closely together. And so it was hard because my eye chart vision was better than 20/20, but the
Wow.
dynamic visual acuity was very, very poor. And actually, the Cubs never figured it out. What happened was I was in school going to University of Washington, and I took Spanish 101 and I got a 2.1, terrible grade. And then I took Spanish 102 and I got a 3.4 or something. And the difference was after 101, that term I was like struggling in school, and I remember buying a can of Coke when I used to drink pop, and so I could have the caffeine, so I could stay awake, because I was getting headaches while I was reading. It was just hard. And now I think about all the kids that, like, their parents, they don't understand they've got a visual problem. And so I went into some eye doctor, and I said, it's kind of hard to read. I don't remember what happened. And then she tests my dynamic visual acuity, and she goes, "Whoa, that's really bad." And she said, "By the way, what kind of work do you do?" I was like, "Oh, pro baseball player." She's like, "How do you see the ball?" I was like, "It's really hard." And she's like, I can't believe you can even see it." And I was like, "Oh, well, that explains a lot, because yeah, I've really struggled."
Wow. And so how do you deal? Is it something you just have to live with, or wear glasses, anything
So
like that?
I think it was a subconscious mental block, but that's my guess. That, I
Okay.
think God worked it out. So obviously, amazingly, I lost what I thought was the best possible life to gain a far better one. Um, but my dad was really against me becoming rich and famous, because I didn't want my ego to get even bigger, and so I think he was very accurate with that. So I think there's a mental block on becoming rich and famous. And so I think that's what caused it, is my guess, a subconscious mental block. No one ever found out the cause. So
It's so wild, Jim, because you were a successful player. I mean, you were drafted and had some really good minor league years. So how do you explain some of the successes? Is it just that you were probably just your your hand-eye coordination was fantastic? Because I still don't understand. Like, I could barely hit a ball and my vision's okay. How with
yeah,
the issues you were dealing with, how were you even making contact?
yeah, thank you. So it's interesting, because batting practice, I was one of the better players in pro baseball, and so it makes sense that throwing it very slow. As soon as it got faster, then I couldn't hit it. And so, but what was interesting, I told you earlier that I had a really good spring. So one year I hit 550 or something in spring training. It was the highest batting average in the whole minor leagues. And but it was early in the year. My eyes, because what happened, I guess, was my eyes would get tired. And so in the spring, my eyes are fresh. And so I think that was kind of what happened, was that they were fresh, and so I could see clearly.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks. So sorry for going off on that tangent, but I had to find
No,
out
thank you.
one of your eyes there. Was the irony lost on you because you're a smart guy? You got a good sense of humor. I wonder, like, you have this book out about greatness, and here you are not so great. Did you ever have some gallows humor of like, man, I sure know greatness. Look at me. I could barely afford a Starbucks coffee. Like, were you able to make light of those moments?
Well, in inner excellence, I just also read another book called The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. It came out on Amazon last November. It's going to get re-released with the new publisher next fall. Um, but there's a couple things. One, it's with inner excellence. The thesis is that self-centeredness is the biggest challenge that we face in performance and in life. And human nature is to be self-centered, and with that is to have an ego that wants to be say, hey, look at me, I'm somebody. And so in the book The Best Possible Life, I used Michael Phelps as an example of maybe the greatest athletic career in history. And how much credit does he get for this incredible accomplishment? And what I say is 2%, God the other 98. And so the reason I use that example is if Michael only gets 2%, do I get more than 2% for any good thing that happens in my life? Definitely not. And so when I know that only 2% of anything good in my life I could at max, in my opinion, take credit for, then that really keeps me centered. And because as soon as you start to take credit for your life, then you've got to take credit for all the mistakes. And with my clients, I tell them, I said, look, you're not responsible for your results. You're not responsible for putting food on the table. Because I mean, there's so many people that are way smarter and talented than me and you that can't put food on the table, that are starving. You're responsible for your heart and your effort. That's it.
Hmm, that's good. That's good. You're right about self-centeredness and greatness. And I feel like we all have a self-awareness problem. Like, it's in general, like we're all incredibly unself-aware, if that's a word,
Yeah,
of our surroundings, whether it's the people in our lives, whether it's just the random people. Is that part of the challenge for a lot of these folks that you work with, just trying to heighten their awareness?
absolutely. The easiest person to deceive is yourself. And as I think about it, it's kind of the probably the main thing that I do with people. I help them clarify who they are, what they want most, how to get it, and like I define humility as an accurate view of self. And so I help people get an accurate view of themselves so they can live with fullness of life.
And how, any tips? I know we want people to read your books and follow your coaching methods, but for improving self-awareness, I mean, obviously intentionality has a lot to do with it, but what advice do you give to people who struggle with self-awareness?
Well, I think when you realize that the biggest challenge that you face in your life right now is self-centeredness, that will be huge self-awareness. Because and the reason that is, I mean, this was, I mean, I have my degree in undergrad is psychology. My master's is coaching science. But the 5 years I spent full time writing and researching the book was so instrumental. And when you realize that our human nature is self-centered, that's the default, and we need to be that way just to even live. We got to feed ourselves and clean up after ourselves and look both ways when we cross the street, so it's our default. But when we think about ourselves, our subconscious that's running our life knows all our failures and all our weaknesses, and it's going to remind us. And so we feel bad, and so when we want to feel better, we look around to compare ourselves, but there's always someone that has more better achievements. So then we feel worse, and so then we try to we go into the self-protection mode, which creates overanalysis, and it creates judgment of self, others, and circumstances, and extreme self-consciousness, and we go into self-protection. And so that's the biggest challenge that we all face, is we're in this self-protection mode where we're walking in fear rather than how we're supposed to walk. We're created to walk in love, which is fearless. And when you can walk in unconditional love, then you can be fearless. And that's what everyone needs to know.
That's great. Great stuff. I want to pick your brain about the subject of greatness. And I feel like greatness is fleeting. An example of this, I was just thinking about this because I knew I was going to talk to you. It was like Michael Jordan. Obviously, if you were to ask someone, greatest athlete of all time is on that Mount Rushmore, you put, Muhammad Ali, Babe Ruth, all, your standard bearers of greatness. But if you look back at his career, Jim, I don't know if you've looked at his Michael Jordan stats lately. I just did today randomly. His last 2 years, he was barely able to score 20 points a game way late in his life as a Washington Wizard. Does that mean Michael Jordan is still great? Is greatness fleeting? It's like Tom Brady. He had a chance to walk away after winning a Super Bowl, and that would have been the cherry on top. Nope, he comes back for another year, possibly costs his marriage, but we won't go there. Comes back, and his team bows out early and doesn't amount to much anything. That next year, he retires. This greatness fleeting because you coach people to get to that, and then what happens when the greatness ends?
You know what? You bring up a great topic, Joe, and that is, I love this topic of greatness. Um, because when I went to the desert, I set out to write the best book ever written on how to have peace and confidence under pressure, mental toughness, how to develop it. And when I was there, I realized that I don't want to spend because I wanted to live a worthy life and the life that I could look back on the end of my life and feel like really good about. And I realized I don't want to spend my life helping someone become world number one when it doesn't even improve their life or they don't even become a better person. It doesn't make the world do anything good for the world. I was like, that would be a waste of my life. And so that's when I started, well, what does it mean to be great? What does it mean to be successful? And, we just had the Masters and Rory had that great tournament that he almost lost. Um, and one thing I think that is important to understand is the goals that you have or any of the viewers have, is that really a good thing for you? Do you know for sure that thing that you say was Rory at the Masters winning, or any of the ones that competed that everyone wanted to win? Would that have been good for them to win? Do we know that for sure? That these things that we want are good for us? I mean, just look back on your life. Is everything you've ever wanted has been good for you? And so what we do know is that the goals that you have and what you want may not be good for you, and it may be the worst thing for you. And so we don't know if our goals are even good for us. And so then where does that leave greatness? And that's where this book that I just wrote called The Best Possible Life, How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence, No Matter What, kind of picks up where Inner Excellence left off. And it gets into, well, what is greatness, and what is that best possible life? What is it really like? And in the book, I asked this in Inner Excellence. I got deeper into it in Best Possible Life. Would you rather have a $10 million house on the water paid off with all the normal concerns of that guy, or would you rather live in an apartment paycheck to paycheck with no savings the rest of your life, but be guaranteed deep contentment, joy, and confidence every single day of your life? Joy meaning a deep sense of well-being, freedom, and gratitude, and inner buoyancy that lifts you in every moment. Would you rather have that, living paycheck to paycheck in an apartment, or the $10 million house paid off?
I mean, I'd be speaking to you for the last 40 minutes. It'd be silly to say, give me the beach house. But no, I totally get it. Like, I mean, I think happiness is, I think sometimes overrated and underrated, because, that person that picks the apartment is probably going to have maybe difficulties making ends meet, but at the end of the day, they're going to be happy with what they have. So yeah, I think we always choose joy.
Yeah, it's really interesting because my whole life, 90% of my life, I would have chosen the house. And that's because I never really had anxiety. If you don't ever deal with anxiety, then why would you ever choose peace and joy? Like, it doesn't matter. I already got good feelings and good excitement. But if you have a lot of anxiety, now you're going to start thinking more about the peace and the joy. And so, but the thing is with the house, why does anyone want the house? Is it because they want the actual bricks and mortar? No, what they want are the feelings they're going to get from the experiences in the house, right? And so this question is, why don't we go for the experiences directly and figure out, what do you really want? Because you could get that house and you may not even feel good about it.
Yeah, but you know what? Your Instagram feed would probably be pretty awesome. Be your IG feed in the apartment, maybe not so much, unless you have got a great dog. But your Instagram would be killer on that beat, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this, because you talked about the struggles of when you first released Inner Excellence, and essentially no marketing. Your publisher just kind of threw it out there and hope for the best. Luckily, it kind of God works in mysterious ways, as they say, and it found its way into other people's hands. And AJ Brown. This time around, new publisher, major promotion. Is this like, I mean, it's almost like a night and day. You're like, oh my God, this is what a publisher, this is what an author really wants, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. So when it was great to have McGraw-Hill, but I was, a no name. And I think what happens typically, at least back then, is a major publisher, maybe they sign 100 authors during the year, and then whatever books kind of take off, they start to kind of promote. And so I think that's fairly common. I don't know, at least back then. So now this was a very different scenario because Inner Excellence, I got the rights to it in 2018 or so. And so then I self-published in 2020, and that's the book that AJ Brown is reading. And so now Hachette Book Group there was an auction, and they won the auction, and I chose them. And so they're now publishing it, as well as Hachette Book Group UK, and so taking it around the world. And so now it's in 25 languages and counting, or something like that, going to be published next year. And so, yeah, it's a very, very different experience. And I've that first week, there was a lot of tears of gratitude, not because my life was slow at the time, but I was in 23 countries the last 2 years, coaching athletes all over the world. And so I've had a pretty great life. The tears of gratitude really came down to one thing, that God would choose me to share this message all over the world. I just really felt like God chose me to share this message with the world. Not my message. Like, you don't have to read Inner Excellence to read this message. It's really kind of a taking the Bible, and like, how can you take the Bible and use it to help your life, be better in your life. That's kind of what I tried to do. And so, yeah, the immense gratitude for God choosing me was pretty amazing.
Awesome. His name is Jim Murphy. The book is Inner Excellence: Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life. Jim, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Joe, that was amazing. I'll have to do it again.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Good Listen. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you're watching on YouTube, please tap that thumbs up button. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, 5-star review, that would be awesome. If you want to catch up on my blog and past episodes, go to joepardavila.com. Until next time, adios.